I'm Guy. Hi.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Podcast below in the description. Check it out. Do it now.
All right, Mitchell Trubisky will not be a 49er. $2.5 million is what the Buffalo Bills get him for, which, you know what? I think I give him some credit on this one. I think it's a great spot for him. I think the Niners would have been a good spot for him. I don't know if he was great for them. This feels like a better fit than it would have been for the 49ers for everybody, actually.
Probably easier for him to come to grips with. Josh Allen's clearly better than him. I'm not saying Jimmy's not, but I'm going to sign $2.5 million. I got Jimmy Garoppolo making 20. I don't know if that factored in or not. It's just a very clear line of delineation with the Buffalo Bills franchise. This is a star player. We're a powerhouse now. We're making the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. We talk about the Niners really highly, and I think they're viewed highly, as we saw with Trent Williams and guys that are there. But from the outside, it's not like they're winning big. He goes there. Here's the other thing. They had an offensive coordinator who felt like it was a lock to become a head coach this year, and then did not happen in Brian Daboll. If they have another big year, and I think they're going to be excellent, that guy is a borderline lock to become a head coach. If Mitchell is a good guy, plays hard, even if they're, I don't know who. Well, I guess we'll find out. Do you think preseason games are going to happen with 17-week season? Probably not. Huh? Maybe one.
I think we'll get a couple. Yeah.
It's just such easy money to put on television for the league and just let guys like Mitchell play. So if Mitchell can have a couple moments for Brian Daboll, but more, it'd be stuff we wouldn't see. Brian Daboll likes him. I bet his agent goes, go with this guy. He's going to be a head coach, and he'll just bring you for at least, maybe you'll get one more $10 million contract. Maybe you could start for a year, resurrect your career. It's not, I think if you think 2 steps ahead, Brandon Beane, the general manager, had a good quote, which, again, is obvious to everybody, but we don't expect him to be here long, right? So I think if his agent sees the big picture, going to a team who wants you, you send him to the Chiefs or whatever, they might not want him, they don't have the money, or Seattle or whoever, that's going to want you and has another head coach, you're thinking almost 2 steps ahead. Like the Niners, do they have a lock head coach next year from the offensive side of the ball? No, they don't.
Right. Yeah, I also think it's great for Mitchell's brand.
Do you agree with that?
I think it's I think it's fantastic, right? I think if look, we've seen it with Nick Foles, right? Nick Foles has repeatedly, since he left the Eagles, played for coaches that were assistant coaches when he was in Philadelphia. And additionally, you'd say he almost went to the Colts last year, and that was Frank Reich was an assistant coach when he was in Philadelphia. I mean, you see it all the time. Coaches in college transfer, get a new job. All of a sudden, somebody from their old school transfers. People want to, particularly from the beginning when you start something, build up with some people around that they know, A, because you can trust them, and B, because you need them to help you kind of integrate other people. It's one of the reasons Gronk, even if he had never played it down for the Bucs, made sense to go to Tampa Bay to be with Tom Brady, just to help everybody else understand what it means to catch passes and be a part of a Tom Brady offense. So I think from that standpoint,
I think the
it makes
Bucs signs James. I think they signed James White too.
James White, that'd be another one. Part of that is helping other players. Part of that is making Tom comfortable. But I also think it's great for Mitchell, just from a brand standpoint. Mitchell has become kind of a guy that Barstool likes, and the Bills have a huge fan base, and he can be up there high-fiving with another quarterback that's really cool, right? Josh Allen. It doesn't quite have the same vibe with Jimmy, I would say. Like you said, the other problem is if you're a team, if Garoppolo's your back, he doesn't want to be Justin Fields' backup if they draft a guy. It's just you go in, and this is where you said when Andy Dalton signed for $10 million, they're signing him to be the starting quarterback. And it's true. They are signing him to be the starter. When you sign for $2.5 million, you are signing to be the backup. And it's easier to accept that that's what you are signing the money for when the starting quarterback is an established starting quarterback, which Josh Allen is. So, plus from a physicality standpoint, they're similar, right? In terms of just gameplay, it makes some sense. Yeah, I like it. I would have liked if you told me the Niners signed him for $2.5 million. I would have liked that. By the way,
me too. Yeah. Me too. I would imagine the Niners would have offered him that contract if it's true they were interested. It would just make more sense for him to go there. I think. I typed in because I was like, well, isn't Matt Barkley their backup? Matt Barkley just had a tweet. It's been real. So clearly they told him, like, hey, you're not coming back, whether I have to look at his contract. But Mitchell Trubisky, on the most basic level of the scouting department, you're always trying to improve your team. So I can get a backup quarterback for relatively cheap. Like, I'd say a solid backup money. We saw it was last year with Mariota, $7 million. That's a high end. You'd say Trubisky and Mariota have accomplished similar stuff when they both signed the contract. Trubisky's pretty cheap. I can get Trubisky and get rid of Barkley. Like, think how excited the Buffalo Bills front office is. Like, that's an easy decision.
Yeah.
Tools. I've thought about this a lot, and I was someone in a draft room that thought Matt Barkley, this guy's not an NFL player. Remarkable that when the dust settles, Barkley's going to have like a 10-year career. Honestly, really impressive. Kudos to him.
Fourth-round pick.
I didn't see that coming, especially when the draft proved like, he wasn't that good.
But he also,
look at the team.
If I were to be on your side of that, I'd say, he never really, 1 year he had to play, and he went 1-5 as a starter, right?
Well, he's not a good player, but there is something to be said, and this, I'm not trying to have a polarizing conversation here, but the thing Kaepernick and backup quarterbacks, a backup quarterback to really make it in the NFL, Chase Daniel, Matt Barkley, the offensive coaches, and we talked about this a little bit with Mitch, with Foles and stuff, and we'll see how Mitch transitions to be a true backup quarterback. You're basically like, a secretary would be diminishing their ability because you at any moment can become the CEO, right, if a guy gets hurt. But really, the team is not planning on you playing at all. They just need you to be – everyone likes you, be like the first guy in the office, know the game plan like an assistant coach. You're really just like the ultimate role player who ideally never has to play a snap.
You're like support staff.
You're like a quality control, but you put on a jockstrap. And make a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
Make a lot more money.
I mean,
it's why I bet some of these guys hear from former quarterbacks, hear from their agent, like, listen, if you play this right, your NFL career may end when you're 32, 35, but you will bank millions of dollars and set yourself up for life and know all these people that will give you opportunities to get involved. Look at Dan Orlovsky, lifetime backup. That's kind of parlayed it into that. Barkley, I've always thought, like, I'm going to look up and Haberman and Barkley are going to be calling like USC Oregon, right? Barkley is just going to have a lot of options when it all ends. He's smart. He's good looking, but he's also going to have like it played out
who are you talking about?
On Fox Sports. Matt Barkley.
Oh, Matt Barkley. I was like, wait a second. Are you talking about Charles Barkley?
I'm talking about Matt Barkley.
Charles?
Like if I told you that you look up in 5 years and Matt Barkley's like calling football games on Fox Sports 1, like with you at Oregon,
John,
Utah,
you might look up next year and he's calling games on Fox, right?
100%. But it's just, it is, I think early on in your life, when you're not an elite player in the sport of football, and I think it's true in basketball too, to become a role player, but like if you can really carve out the role and really master it, you can change your life. And I bet someone told Chase Daniel that early on, and he's the best example. Again, we make the moment these guys have to play, all of us are on our couches, texting with our buddies, tweeting like, God, this guy sucks. Guess what? We all know it in the league. You couldn't ask one person in the league, like, would you want Matt Barkley? Every single scout, every single assistant pro director, every GM would say, fuck no, I don't want him. You know who wants him? The offensive coordinator, the head coach, feel comfortable with him around. They're the guys to fight for.
And I would add maybe the starting quarterback.
I'll give you another example. Chad Hall, who one time I got into an argument, I think, with his wife, who actually I think is Matt Stafford's sister. I made fun of him on something. He was someone, because there's a guy like Chad Hall who ended up having a 6, 7, 8-year career, who had no business probably playing more than a couple years on the practice squad, but who liked him. Harbaugh liked him. Andy Reid liked him. What do you do when you look up now at Bills games with Chad Hall? He's the wide receiver coach for Sean McDermott, who was around him in Philadelphia. Like, if you just learn, you can impress these human beings. The thing with the NFL, probably more than the other sports, just because how big coaching staffs are, you really, like when I first got to the Eagles, I'd never heard of Sean McDermott. Matt Nagy was this dude at the little desk. Like, you're around all these people. You could be at shitty teams that's like that. Like, think of the guys with the Colts last year. You're just around Nick Sirianni. All of a sudden you look up, the dude's a head coach. Like, things just change so fast. It's part of what I'm saying about Brian Daboll. He's destined to be a head coach, or he's a lock. Maybe not. I mean, who's no Chad Hall's not a head coach in the NFL in like 3 or 4 years. Maybe Matt Barkley doesn't want to work for Fox Sports 1. Maybe he becomes an offensive coordinator. He's like Chad Hall's offensive coordinator. Like, that's not inconceivable, is it? Did we look up in 10 years and Matt Barkley's an OC in the NFL?
There's some guy who's never played in the league that's going to get, you just become, you attach in an office, and 20 years later, you're the GM of the team.
It happened. Howie Roseman. Didn't even take him 20 years.
No, necessarily. It doesn't necessarily. Here's the other thing, by the way.
I just think the web's the strongest in the NFL, just based on the most amount of people and the turnover, coaches and players, right? It's just people moving all over the place every year. It's crazy, right? Just the quantity. Like in the NBA, it's kind of similar, but they're just way less human beings.
I do think NBA staffs are probably bigger than you realize, right? Like the number of people on the staff for the
True.
Players involved. So
the difference though is like a quarterback coach. What's the number 2 guy or 3 guy in the NBA making? Like can become a quarterback coach, start making like $850,000.
I think the big difference is it's harder to identify the assistants in basketball. No one is calling plays. There's no offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, DB coach that you go, oh, all these DBs have been really good. This is the guy coaching them. It's really hard in basketball for those people to become part of the conversation. Also, even the head coach. The head coach doesn't call every
People
play.
have been saying about Steve Kerr for years. Like, what's Steve actually do? If Bruce Frazier, the dude that works Curry out, was an NFL coach, he'd be considered like Kafka for Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback coach.
Yeah.
Kafka's already interviewed for NFL jobs. He's like 34. I mean, it's just, but you're right. You can't like that to that. Like Bruce Frazier, if he was in the NFL, there's a decent chance someone would have interviewed him for a head coaching job, right? Whatever his role. He'd be viewed as like the quarterback coach.
It'd be Steve Kerr's guy.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Honestly, he might already be a head coach.
By the way, I think Mitchell will play. The Bills had like several blowouts. Like Barkley's played 5 games last year, so we'll get to see Mitchell.
Let me end it on this. The worst feeling for that backup quarterback when they realize, oh my God, this job was so good. Fuck. Like that had to suck to get that news.
I know.
But
again,
Matt Barkley.
There's not 32 starting level quarterbacks in the NFL, like 32 guys that should start 16 games. So I'm not sure that he's played his last snap.
Yeah, or had his last job for a year.
He might be on the Niners. 52% completion. Yeah, and not accurate.